And now we're starting to transition into 2020. And that's when I ended up linking with Rex. You know, we did the joint Change Gonna Come. You know, same thing happened. You know, the blogs picked it up. But the big thing that came out of it is that DJ Premier spun it on his radio station on Live from Headquarters. I mean, anybody knows that if Primo's paying attention, you're doing something right. For him to put that on his station was a big deal to me. I'm still trying to keep it moving. But everything is really starting to weigh heavy on me at this point. And we go into the pandemic. Everything shuts down. The studio I record at, closed. Directors, they're not shooting videos. Photographers aren't shooting either. Venues closed. You know, this was a huge hit. This was right at my peak. Now it's starting to break in. You know, my numbers are going up. My listeners are going up. You know, the fans are buying the merchandise. Like, everything is exactly how it's supposed to be. Promoters are reaching out to me to pay me to be the headliner. You know, everything's lining up for me. So when everything shut down, I had to think of a plan B. In the midst of all this, I linked with a childhood friend of mine, Rockwood. We created Sound Lair Studio together. We wanted to keep in mind what we wanted as a producer or as an artist when we walk into a studio, what the environment is that we would appreciate if we were gonna go there. And that's exactly how we designed this place. Creating this studio was twofold, because it took me away from doing the music temporarily in order to pursue a different revenue stream. But I'm happy that I've done it, because now I have a place that I can come and work out of whenever I need. I have a producer who's here 24/7 whenever I need, and we can make music whenever we want. And so while that's going on, I'm working exclusively with SandoFilms. Him and I are putting together, you know, treatments, and we're coming up with ideas, and we're putting out great content. 3 a.m. thoughts, 5 a.m. thoughts. I Like Dreaming, which was the first video that I was able to shoot once the pandemic started to like open up a little bit. You know, after we had months of lockdowns, that was the first thing that him and I shot. Everything else we wanted to do, it got postponed. So there were songs that had videos and treatments already put together. But by the time we were able to get together to shoot these, the songs had already run their course. They had been out for months. So we had to backburn everything, and I had to start working on new material for him and I to put together. While I'm doing this, Sound Lair Studio is about to open. And so my focus, it shifts again, because now I'm trying to work on the business side of things. And so now I had to pump the brakes. You know, I had been dealing with so much stress, so much bullshit. It just caught up to me. You know, kind of like one of those things where you try to backburn it for so long that it eventually, you know, like the saying goes, what you do in the dark comes out in the light, so to speak. I was having a real difficult time focusing and making music. You know, it was like, you know, what's the fucking point? I was really focused at that point on almost like trying to be normal, you know? Go to the grocery store, run your errands, you know, go out on the weekends, you know, things that I never really, you know, did. You know, I didn't have time for all that shit, you know, and that's something that, you know, we don't talk a lot about as artists, is that because we're so busy and we create this schedule that we're on, that the people around us, they do suffer the most. It does cause a lot of strain on relationships, whether it be, you know, with your girl or your best friend or someone in your family. They take notice that you're not around, or you're tired, or you don't want to do this, or I can't go out tonight, you know, I got to be in the studio, like I got a session, or I got to write for this project, you know, it's due in 2 days. It's such a catch-22 because you're literally in control of the entire process. But at the same time, you know that if this doesn't get done, if you don't move the needle, no one's going to do it for you. And we live in a space where people are constantly craving content from you. You know, there was a time where somebody would put out an album and then they would just tour for like a year, and then they would put out another album, you know, a year and a half, 2 years later, and that was fine. Now people want you to put out 2, 3, 4 albums a year, where every single quarter they're expecting something new from you. And when you're trying to live, you know, what I'd like to call like a normal life, almost like a 9-to-5 life, it gets really difficult trying to incorporate all those things into it. And that's why I say people get neglected, people get hurt. And so you're the one who's running on fumes. You're the one who's always exhausted. You're the one who's trying to survive off of 3-4 hours of sleep because you were up the night previously until 3-4 o'clock in the morning working on something new, or putting together merch, or setting up a promotion, or working with a producer. Something always comes up. And then you have to wake up the next morning and you have to act like it's all good when on the inside you're fucking dying. And while I was working on myself, a lot of things started clicking. You know, what do I want out of life? You know, ultimately I think what most people want, you know, companionship. You know, the house with the picket white fence in the front, your kids laughing and playing in the background while you're having your morning coffee, and the sun's just barely peeking into your window, like that warm feeling. And I still want those things. There was a part of me that felt like I had to give up the thing that makes me me in order to obtain it. And that's why this shit is such a juggling act. Because you start thinking it's never gonna happen, or you've made it as far as you could possibly go. But then you start thinking back on the times where it was the first time you got played on the radio. Check. First time a major publication picked you up and wrote an article about you. Check. The first time a promoter hit you up to perform at their venue and pay you. Check. At one point, you didn't have any of these things and they were all bucket list items. And there's a process behind it. You know, you don't just wake up and everybody knows your name. It's not realistic. You know, there's building blocks. I was creating a great foundation for myself where I wasn't one of those artists who just kind of came out of left field, you know, where I had the established fan base. And it wasn't just here in the States, you know, it was overseas. It was in the UK, Australia. Different countries would, you know, of fans were reaching out to me. Where can I get your music? Where can I buy your merchandise? When are you coming out here? You know, when are you going to perform overseas, bro? And it's crazy to think that there's people out there who think I'm that big where I'm just going to wake up one day and I'm going to go perform overseas. But like, that's how they see things, you know, and they don't realize you're still in the building block phase. You're not there yet. While I was working on myself, you know, I had a childhood friend pass away. It's not so much uncommon, you know, nowadays, especially where I'm from, but, you know, it was an overdose. So I go to his service. One of his sisters I had never met before, believe it or not. You know, we'd known each other a really long time since we were teenagers, but I had never met his sister, one of his sisters. I'm about to leave. I hear somebody say, "Hey, you," and kind of tug on my arm. They pull me down and they're like, "You're Sinical, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know, that's me." She says, "My brother used to talk about you all the time. He used to make me listen to your music, and you're the reason why he started writing and recording himself. And I just wanted to say hi to you." And so that's where it hit me, where I had to make a choice. I was either gonna 100% call it a wrap and walk away from this shit, or I was gonna go harder than ever. And I wasn't gonna stop until I made it. And I almost walked away. You know, I talked to different people, and when people saw that this might be the decision I made, I had a lot of people reach out. You know, some people that I know directly, some people that I work with in music, and then just random fans. You need to give us another album. You need to do this. Like, can't just walk away now, bro. Nothing anyone said had an impact on what I was gonna do. I took everybody's opinion for face value, and I appreciate it. But at the end of the day, it's just you. And so I had a decision to make, and I had to weigh it very consciously. I took my girl into consideration, our future, how we're gonna get from A to B, the things that we want in life, what it's gonna look like in 5 years, my family, and most importantly, me. And I literally couldn't see a world in which I existed where I did not make music. It was relaxing to be normal. I still felt empty, like something was missing. And it's just the feeling that you get when you walk into a session and the music's loud and, you know, the producer and you are vibing and you're writing and you're recording and, you know, you take an idea and you build around it, and then it becomes this intangible thing that you hold so close to your heart, you know, that it becomes a part of you. And so now that I look back on things, you know, I'm even fortunate to be as far as I've come. There's a lot of people who don't even make it this far. The artists that I've gotten to work with, from, you know, Term to Slane to Rex, I mean, these are all guys that I grew up listening to because they come from where I come from. So to be able to work with them, you know, be around them, kick it, you never really expect relationships to come out of this or to keep in touch with people. But what I can tell you is that a lot of the people that I've worked with, we're still cool. We still talk to one another, you know, and sometimes it ain't even about some music shit. It could be, you know, you catch the C's game last night, or sometimes it's, you know, they call you and they give you advice and you better listen because they were you once. And so they know what they're talking about. I am working on a new album. I'm not going to give a release date, but what I can tell you is that a lot of thought went behind this concept. You can't expect that to be dropping in early 2022.